thank you so much for coming. I just want to give you, for those of you who are not here at the press conference, homelessness in Orange County. Underneath this, we have transitional housing and emergency shelter. Basically, transitional shelters now being funded by Orange County by HUD. So we don't have any more transitional housing funded by HUD in Orange County. There is no emergency shelter beds. So what they're supporting right now is permanent supported housing and rapid housing. And many of these people are not eligible for those two programs. So basically, whether it's by design or not, we have a group of people, a big population of people who will not be eligible for any type of HUD funding. And people think what's not as saying this group will be discriminated. Thank you.
Kelly, for the wonderful invitation here this afternoon. When people ask you or ask me, what's up? The correct answer, of course, is nothing but the rent nowadays. And of course, some of you have attended the earlier events and focused on the homeless issue, and which affordability is, of course, the big issue. Congressman Sanchez, why don't you kick things off here and give us your view of this important issue and as it relates to Orange County and, of course, the entire Southern California region.
Certainly. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us, and I want to thank both of my colleagues, Maxine, who is our senior member, our ranking member on the Housing Committee, and knows a lot about this issue, believe me, much more than anybody probably. And of course, to our member of our Orange County delegation, because while he gets a lot of votes out of Long Beach, he still represents a good swath here of Orange County. To my friend Lowenthal, thank you both for being here. For working so hard on this issue, to the Teamsters for hosting this forum, which is so important to Orange County. Thank you, Patrick Kelly. So, in a nutshell, there have been many studies done over the last few couple of years. And one thing that always stands out on these housing studies is that the affordability gap for housing is so incredibly large in Orange County, California. In some of these studies, we are the number one of the biggest affordability gap between the average wage that is earned by somebody and the cost of monthly rent or a monthly mortgage payment in any county in the United States. So what it basically tells us is it's very difficult for us to find an apartment or to afford a home in Orange County on the wages that we earn. And this is one of the reasons why we have homeless in Orange County, even though we are a wealthy named county in our nation. The second thing was this big recession that we've come out of. People came in owning homes, they came out not owning those homes. And Maxine and I will tell you that we see this over and over. People who have, let's say, a monthly mortgage of $1,500 a month, who now are paying $1,800 a month in rent. So they lost their equity, they lost their ability to own a home and be making equity, and now they're renting back something less, or sometimes even the same home, but they're paying more for it and see no equity buildup. And that is sad for Americans, because the number one step on the rung of wealth creation is buying a home, is owning a home. So that is another thing that we see. And then, so we have this homeless population. They say on any given night of the year, there can be between 10 and 12,000 people in Orange County who do not have a roof over their head. They are living in the park, they are living in the encampment of the river, or they might be living in a motel room if they are fortunate to have a motel roof over their head that night. So here's the problem. A lot of our people are women, a lot of our homeless are women with children. Some are leaving domestic abuse situations, some are leaving child abuse situations. They're running out from where they can no longer take being in that home and now transitioning transitional housing has been completely cut. Because HUD has decided that they would rather invest in permanent housing than invest in transitional housing. But transitional housing has a key role to play, especially here in Orange County. So places like Colette and places like the Eli home, places like Orangewood, etc., have been cut of their transitional funding. And this is one of the issues that we are going to discuss today. So I want to thank all of you for caring about that issue. I'm sorry that I'm going to have to run out, but this was supposed to start about an hour ago. But we thank you for, this is that we had a very long press conference where we really talked to the people of Orange County and Southern California about how important this is. So thank you again. Thank you to my colleagues in particular for being here to address this issue today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Maxine Waters is with us today as well from Los Angeles, and Congressman, great to see you here, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. And I know you take on the big issues at head on, and we just heard 10,000 to 12,000 homeless here in Orange County, and I believe the last estimate for Los Angeles city alone of 47,000, which is larger than the population of many cities, not only in this region but in the United States. Tell us what we need to know about this critical issue facing this area.
Well, thank you very much for being here to moderate this panel today. I consider you very important to the work that I do as a ranking member of the Financial Services Committee. With a lot of financial services issues, HUD and housing emerges as one of the most important parts of that work. And so I've already been able to talk with you about these issues, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. But let me give a shout out to Patrick Kelly. Patrick Kelly called me at 6 o'clock this morning, as he often does, and he reminded me of where I told him I would be, and I assured him that I would if he would just let me get off the phone and get a little bit more sleep. He is my friend. He is a hard worker. I love him because in his role and the responsibility that he has, he is absolutely looking out for the average person in our society and looking out for the middle class, trying to maintain a decent quality of life. And of course, he knows the financial services issues very well, and he engages me not only on housing, but on the Fed and on the FEC, the SEC, the OCC, and all of those financial services agencies who have the oversight responsibility for housing and banking and insurance and all of that. So I want to thank Patrick for his dedication and his work. Thank you so very much. Give him a round of applause. Why am I in Orange County? Don't I have enough to do in LA County and the rest of the country? Well, of course I do, except I have a piece of legislation that impacts the entire United States. But before I talk about that, let me just say to those of you here in Orange County, I understand the issue, and I understand why you should be concerned about transitional housing. And this diagram that you shared with me tells the story. And of course, I've been concerned for a while about those bureaucrats, mostly young people now, who get in the back room and make decisions about how resources are going to be allocated. And oftentimes, they are well-meaning. Many of them came straight out of Harvard, but they have no experience on the ground. And so this reminds me of that kind of decision-making. And while I know HUD has moved these counties in this direction to talk about permanent supportive housing, that's one thing to talk about, but it's extremely costly, and the money is not there to really do permanent supportive housing. What are we talking about? We're talking about units of housing that we don't have, that we need to build, we need to put together. We're also of services that are very costly, whether you're talking about the mental health services, whether you're talking about simply providing the kind of support that will get people to the doctor's office on time, whether you are, prepared to have emergency services where you can direct resources any time of day or night to people who are, having problems, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a great idea to have permanent supportive housing. And someday, I hope that we will have it in this country. But right now, what we have is, we have millions, thousands of people all over the country who are on the streets. In Los Angeles, they're on the streets all the way up to City Hall. The city council members practically have to step over them to get into City Hall. New York, off the scale. And I just allude to this because it is a big national problem, a huge national problem that we should all feel very ashamed about. It is absolutely unconscionable that in this country we can end up with people on the street in the way that they are. Loretta alluded to the fact that we went through a subprime meltdown in 2008, where many people trying to live the American dream signed on the dotted line for parties they couldn't afford. But they were encouraged to do that. They were helped to do that, even there was some fraud involved. And people would say, well, just let's indicate you make more money than you really do. And just sign on the dotted line. And don't worry, you can get in with a low down payment or a no down payment, or you're not even going to bet what you own and what your financial status is. Just get in the house, and we assure you that we'll be able to deal with whatever takes place, particularly if the interest rates go up. We will be able to work with you on that. We'll refi. We heard a lot about refi. We'll refi on that. Well, many of the people who signed on the dotted line, when the interest rates went up, they didn't make any more money after the interest rates had been raised than they did when they signed on the dotted line for that mortgage. And so, this put a lot of people on the street. This put families on the street. We had folks who got into these predatory loans, who lost these homes, and they ended up, living with relatives and going to shelters, et cetera, et cetera. And some of them, from 2008, still are not settled in a home. And many of them now have bank credit, and it goes on and on and on. And the price of rental and leasing has gone up. They can't afford it. And so we have an explosion of people on our streets. So this transitional housing problem that you are working on is real. It is real because if you are out of a home, and even if you find a job, or even if you make a little bit more money than you made when you lost your home, it takes more than that to get into a house or to a rental unit. Many of the rental units, you have to have the deposit and the first and last month's rent. That's like a down payment. That's like a down payment on the house. And so, what do you do from the time that you can work to get yourself together? About clothing, about gasoline, about all that it takes to go on a job and be there every day. You need some help in having a place to live. You need transitional housing. And many folks, if they can just get their foot in the door and land into housing that will hold them in good stead, and they can get back to work, and the kids are not going to school out of the car where they've slept all night, they will be all right. But without that bridge, it is going to be awfully hard. I want to tell you, the shelters are overrun. Downtown Los Angeles, the people sleep out on the sidewalk in front of the shelter, where they have been standing or laying all day long hoping to be able to get a bed at night. And I know that that's true also here in Orange County. And so, this transitional housing is very, very important. And I support the idea that we should not put all of our eggs in one basket and say, oh, we're going to have permanent supportive housing and we're going to get rid of homelessness. I wish it could work that way, but it doesn't really work that way. So I like the idea that you're putting your effort toward maintaining traditional housing, and the county board of supervisors and others who have some flexibility in the way that they spend the money that they're allocated have to be pressured. They have to be absolutely pressured into hearing what you're saying and dealing with this issue in a real way. And so, let me just say, I know that the cost of housing in this country is expensive. And we've been nibbling around the edges when we talk about what we're going to appropriate in Washington to deal with homelessness. And so I told my staff, enough is enough. And so instead of looking at small amounts, I introduced a bill for $13 billion. $13 billion. Of 2016, the bill provides $13.27 billion in emergency funding over 5 years to provide an estimated 405,000 to 410,000 units of housing to end homelessness in America. HUD's estimate of homeless households in the latest point in time count is 407,000. 85,000 permanent supportive housing units for privately homeless individuals. 295,000 to 300,000 Section 8 HCV units, 25,000 new deeply affordable units to the National Housing Trust Fund, funding for eligible programs under the Huntington Homeless Assistance Grant Program, including rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and emergency shelter. Working with homeless populations. Now, you know, I come from an old social work background. And when I ask, how do we know who the people are? And where do they come from? Do they have relatives with resources? Do they have insurance policies that they've forgotten about or don't know about? And they keep telling me that they have people on the street who are doing the kind of looking at the whole person and the whole family that's needed in order to get them housed. I don't believe it, so the bill provides the necessary resources to increase the number of outreach workers on the street working with homeless populations. The bill targets resources to communities with the highest needs. The bill provides funding to help states and local jurisdictions align their strategies on providing services to those homeless populations who need it, and also dealing with the chronically homeless individuals. The funding provided in this bill will allow the existing annual appropriations, approximately $2.3 billion annually, to continue to serve households through a variety of approaches, including supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and again, transitional housing. We have to have all of it. We can't just take it and say we're going to have supportive housing because, you know, if we wait on the money to support that, it's not going to happen for many years. The bill details $5 billion over 5 years for homeless assistance grants. $5 billion, $1 billion annually for 5 years will provide an additional 84,000 new permanent supportive housing units, which should effectively eliminate chronic homelessness across America. The latest HUD PIT count showed 83,170 chronically homeless individuals. And while this funding talks a lot about permanent supportive housing, it can fund all McKinney dental activities again, including transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and emergency shelter program. And this is why I'm telling you to put pressure on your supervisors, because they have the flexibility within this McKinney dental activity to support transitional housing. I'm not going to go into much more detail except to say this thing about Section 8 housing choice vouchers. You can get a Section 8 voucher all you want to, you can't find a place to live. You just got a voucher, and you're running around from county to county talking about, I have a voucher, let me in. And they're saying there's no get a lot more money out of that fund. I won't go into a lot of detail, but when they took over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we were supposed to get this housing trust fund money from them, but of course, the way that they're doing it, even though Fannie and Freddie pay back all the money that belonged to them in the bailout, this money now is going straight into the federal government revenue pouch. And so we should be getting that money for housing. Let me wrap this up without going much further by saying this. This should be a bipartisan bill. This should be Democrats and Republicans, and whatever you want to call yourself, socialists, whatever you are. Everybody should be on this bill, and I'm particularly focused on our faith-based community. Because go to church every Sunday, and you talk about feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and housing the homeless. Now, I'm going to challenge some people about their faith and about their religion and whether or not they really believe what they say. And so we have prayer meetings. And some of the people who go to pray are people that when they vote, their vote does not match the prayer. And so we're going to challenge folks. This whole idea of this bill, no matter how many people say, oh, that's so much money. No, we have to have this discussion about the real cost of homelessness. And this is what we're going to do. And so when Patrick said come to Orange County, just as I'm going to go to New York and St. Louis and every place else I can go, we have to have the discussion and move forward and challenge elected officials at every level to deal with something that should not be happening in America, and that's homelessness. And so Orange County, I'm with you. Let's fight for that transitional housing. I want you to not give up, but I want you to be timid about it. Go walk in, sleep in, and lay in, and get this transitional housing. It can be done. Thank you very much.
Issues here, and you just reminded me that Patrick Kelly called me at 5:20 this morning. Patrick, you're terrific. Thank you very much again for the invite. In fact, in today's paper, it raises an important point. They were talking about that these vouchers only cover rent for a one-bedroom up to $1,200, and it's almost impossible nowadays to find a place for $1,200 in the Los Angeles area. Congressman Lowenthal is with us here as well. Represents portions of Los Angeles as well as Orange County. Last time I saw you, Congressman, you were honored by the Long Beach School Foundation, and Senator Lowenthal, I knew you at that time, and that event, by the way, the Most Inspiring Student Awards is coming up in 2 days on June 2nd, so hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us, and since you cover both LA and Orange counties, give us your view of what Congressman Waters and Congressman Sanchez have to say, and what you think needs to be done to deal with this critical issue here today.
Well, I think the first thing, can you hear me? The first thing is, I want to thank Billy O'Connell and Patrick for really bringing us together to highlight this. I'm very, very appreciative that we're here, because my addition to what we're saying, I support everything that will be supportive of Maxine's bill, also the leadership of Loretta here in Orange County. But my thinking is one size does not fit, especially if you do one size fits all and you eliminate some of the most key parts to it. That is, give you a little background, a little data. In 2013, the continuum of care here in Orange County, there were 26 housing projects that were eligible through Orange County's continuum of care, 26 transitional housing projects. You know how many there are today that are eligible for funding? 0. Going from in 3 years from 26 to 0. While permanent supported or supported permanent housing really helps some of our population. It helps our population that is either chronically homeless or helps our population, that may be disabled in some way to get them immediately into housing. We have folks who are homeless for a variety of reasons. Women who are victims of domestic violence, people who've lost their last paycheck, people who have families and they have to feed their kids and dress their kids by going to the park, and to push all of those people away from community-based programs that have strong linkages to the community. We're talking about kind of ripping, not only the home, we're talking about ripping apart those community-based programs that really have a sense of community and a heart of community, and to put it in just as in the house. And that may be needed, but I'll tell you why it's a real problem with that. From 2005 to 2011, New York City decided to go to a rapid rehousing program. That's what they did. They were going to rapidly rehouse people, and they had took 33,000 people from shelters and put them in supportive housing or permanent supportive housing. What happened? A significant number, a statistically significant number of those people ended up going back to the shelters. We want programs that work. We want programs that are linked to our community. We want programs that provide dignity and provide people with the support that they need. And immediately applying permanent housing is not the first step for many, many people. They need to have a situation that's stabilized, and they need to be around people to care and teach them the skills that they need to go on and train them. Money well spent. I will tell you, before I was in Congress, I've been down on my own. I was a psychologist and mental health. And I am definitely need that in Congress. And I will tell you that we need to make sure that we invest in programs that work. Not programs that sound good, programs that work. I hear the not any programs, but if you take out the core part of this equation, you eliminate the ability of people to feel better about themselves in their community, stabilize their life situation before they get into permanent housing. And you will agree, cutting Orange County from 13 to 0 makes no sense, especially when we've seen in New York that it doesn't work. The data is overwhelming. That works for some, and not for others. Let's make sure that we support those people that really need transitional housing. And so I'm really pleased to be here and to thank Billy and to thank Patrick and my colleagues Maxine and Loretta for spearheading this. But I really want to be part of the program, a part of something that works. And you can't cut out transitional housing and think this is going to work. Thank you.
Of course. Let me just also point out that one thing that might come as a surprise, that in fact was written up in the New York Times today, that the population of homeless among seniors has skyrocketed recently, something like 30% nationwide. So that's something that is of great concern as well. Let's open it up to the floor here. I know the first question is sometimes slow in coming, so is there a second question from the audience? We have to take it for Congressman Lowenthal. Or Patrick B. Kelly.
Let me say something.
Yes, sir, right ahead.
I just want to say, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank our members, BSM members, that are homeless, that sleep in their cars. We've got people that are actually bus drivers and warehouse workers that live in tents and sleep in their car. And I'll tell you, you wouldn't think, oh, Teamsters are homeless, but it's not just Teamsters. I know there's the sisters are here from SEIU, and we'll be here from Marisol. It is a form of what an old friend of mine who's long gone called modern barbarism. That's what we're dealing with when we're stepping over the homeless. And earlier today, a bunch of us went down to the encampment, on the Santa Ana riverbed. And there's people who have established their homes down there and they're living in tents. And I can tell you that, and this is somebody that I've had my ups and downs, and the Teamsters have helped me a lot. And we've all known people that have have suffered through homelessness or through addictions or through these different processes. And what Alan just said was very important, because when people are homeless, they become homeless, their self-esteem goes in the tank. And the process of getting back and renormalization, the process of renormalization or the process of rebooting takes time. And they can't just move into, from boom, I'm homeless to now I'm renting. It doesn't work so simple. It's more complicated. And we have to have the support services that help people make these transitions so they can rebuild their ego. And so their self-esteem is reconstructed so that they can come back into the working class or the middle class or whatever you want to call it and transition into jobs or into education. So when he says that you need to have a psychological and an educational component to help these folks transition, it's the facts. And I think it's indisputable what he's saying. And I'm just so grateful that we've got 3 strong congresspeople here in Southern California who come in here and take the time to interface with people. We did invite Dana Rohrabacher, and we also invited Ed Royce. Now, Royce is important because he's on the same committee that Congresswoman Waters is on. And that is a critical committee, which I guess Alan could explain better than I could, but that is a committee that we need to get support for Maxine's bill on that committee. Now, there are several congresspeople that are Republicans that are in Orange County, and we need to reach out to them, and I thought the idea of like through the faith-based community or however, and urge these folks to come together to support everybody on this issue. It's only going to work if it's on a nonpartisan or bipartisan basis. Now, many of you are practitioners here in Orange County, and you know the only way in most districts that we can get traction, and I know Michelle is running for the supervisor, she's going to have to go in and work, assuming that she gets elected, and I think there's a good possibility. But I'll tell you that if she gets in there, she's got to work with the Republicans that are on that supervisorial board. And just like the other folks that have to work, Sandy is down there in Costa Mesa, and different people are in different places, but we can only function, and Billy, God bless him, he is a Republican, and there's a few Republicans here, but we have to work with the Republican Party. So people have to understand that if we are going to achieve our goals here in Orange County, we can't try to function like we were part of LA County. Even Long Beach is changing where we had to deal with it. I came here from Chicago. Well, Chicago's a different deal. You know, you have the conservatives in Chicago that happen to be in the Democratic Party. They're not really in the Republican Party. So you have a very, very big tent within the Democratic Party. And so the only way we're going to be successful is to do the big tent. And I don't know why Dan couldn't be here today, but I know Royce is traveling. But I can tell you that we're going to grab hold of this issue, and we're going to stay with this issue here in Orange County. And we had other people from the labor movement today when we were downtown. We had people from the carpenters, we had people from the Orange County Employees Association, we had people from the iron workers, and I know there was a brother from a building trades here, he might have had a lead, Ernesto Medrano. But I'm telling you, we have to go to the big tent in the community to be effective on whatever we're going to do. Whatever we're going to do. When Alan was a state senator, he was effective because he could reach across the aisle. And it's the same thing in Congress, it's the same thing in the Senate, and we've got to move on that basis. I know that there's a lot of people here that are pretty active. And we've got one brother that was here, I don't know if he left, but he spoke earlier, Dr. Moe, and he said specifically when we were down at the press conference that, hey, everybody needs to look at their own mind and their own heart, because this change starts on an individual basis. And I completely believe that. I think that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you got to hold yourself accountable and figure out, what are you doing to make a difference? And a lot of us in here are labor movement people. people, but a lot of us that are here are not really part of the labor movement. You're indirectly connected with the labor movement. And I can tell you that there's nothing that we can't achieve in terms of the homeless issues if we work together. And I can tell you, Billy, he's on the city council in Huntington Beach, and he's an effective liaison with the Republicans and with the labor movement and with the community. And I know, Laura, you've been there, you know, you have to reach out, you have to find those Republicans that are sympathetic or empathetic to our issues, and people that really will work across the aisle. But it takes work. You can't just assume that people are going to roll with you because of the righteousness or the purity of your heart or your ideas, right? So that someone once said, politics is the art of the possible, right? It's true. It's true. And I'm so grateful